Hello and welcome to the Amazing Nerdiverse. I'm Jeff Grants. This is the podcast where we talk about all things good and geeky in the Amazing Nerdiverse. We're talking movies, TV shows, video games, comic books. Keyword there, comic books, which we'll be talking about today. No Steven this week. He's feeling a little under the weather. But you know what? That's okay, because we've got some great guests lined up for the show this week. We've got the creators of the webcomic Kamikaze, who are doing a Kickstarter right now for their second volume of their trade paperback collection of Kamikaze. We got the whole creative team of the comic. We got Carrie and Alan Tupper and Havana Nguyen on the show today to talk about Kamikaze. So, with no further ado, let's jump into my interview with them. Time travel. Too bad Steven missed it. Hey guys, I'm here with Carrie and Alan Tupper and Havana Nguyen. They're the creators of an awesome webcomic called Kamikaze, which right now is on Kickstarter. They're raising money for the second volume of their printed collection, which is great. That means there's already one out there that you can pick up and read, which I definitely recommend because I checked it out. There it is right there. I checked it out and I love it. So guys, Carrie, Alan, Havana, thanks for being on the show today.
Well, thank you so much for having us. Yeah.
Yep. Do you guys, real quick, want to just introduce yourselves so people know who's who?
Sure Havana, why don't you start us off?
Sure. My name's Havana, and I am the lead character artist on Kamikaze. I was brought in 2012, shortly after I graduated college, and I just hit it off with Alan and Carrie immediately. And I do the character art, I do the graphic design and the lettering, and it's been a fun ride so far.
I'm Carrie Tupper. I am the lead writer and the ink and paint artist on Kamikaze, and I started on this project with Alan shortly after I met him, and then somewhere along the way we got married, and that was nice. That was great.
And I'm Alan. I do the rough layout, the background art, web development, business development, pretty much all the other things on Kamikaze. I like to think of myself as the glue between these two fantastic women. And yeah, I've been working with Carrie on Kamikaze since I think it was 2005, 2006 when we started off, and it was sort of a side project for us. We kind of worked on it as sort of a casual project we tossed back and forth. It wasn't really until 2012 that we met up with a director friend, and he really encouraged us to get very serious on it. And along the way, he introduced us to Havana, and that's how this whole triad of power started up.
Nice. So before we get into Kamikaze itself, real quick, can you guys tell me a little bit about how you got started in this? Like growing up, did you guys want to do comics or animation, that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I grew up. So I'm a little bit of an odd duck. I grew up without cable TV or broadcast TV. I grew up on a lot of Disney films and a lot of Star Trek: The Next Generation on VHS. Nice. So I grew up on a steady diet of that. Plus, my mom is a big Tintin and Asterix the Gaul fan, so I grew up on a steady diet of that stuff. So a lot of adventure comics, a lot of sort of European style comics, and also Star Trek: The Next Generation. So my mom's a huge Trekkie as well. Nice. So I kind of grew up on a steady diet of that. So things like Titan AE when they came out was sort of I can have the peanut butter and the chocolate together.
Yeah.
And so. Yeah, I think that was always something that I wanted to do. I got into college originally to do computer game development. I was looking to do the art side of that, and along the way I realized, no, I really do have this affinity for the the art side of it and like the comic and storytelling part of it. So I wanted to see what I could do to tackle that, and that's kind of how I got into this all.
Nice. Who wants to go next?
Havana, you can go next.
So Carrie and Alan have been working on Kamikaze as a concept for a while, and a mutual friend that Alan was talking about one day called me on my way to a job interview, and he asked me, "Are you interested in working on a concept for an animated TV series?" And I said, "Hell yeah!" I've always been an animation fan. I grew up like kind of sheltered, so I grew up with a lot of cartoons and just like I've been drawing since I was 3. I'm the black sheep of the 3 because I don't have an art degree. I've changed my major 4 times, but I ended up with an international affairs degree. And Kamikaze, I jumped on it because I have such a great creative chemistry with both Alan and Carrie. And it was really cool to me to work with animation fans because I never went to school with hardcore animation fans like that. So it was really cool to get to meet people who kind of understood that. And we all share the belief that animation can be a medium, regardless of background or age. It's just a powerful storytelling medium. So I think that passion really ties us all together. And Kamikaze is kind of like my outlet for that creative side.
Nice. Carrie, you want to tell us how you got started in this business?
I got started in this, well, when I was a kid, a really, really young kid. I got sick one day, and my mother, in her wisdom, decided to get all these VHS tapes of random movies and stuff. And one of them was like a Disney, like kind of a behind the scenes thing that Disney used to do, sort of like in the world of Walt Disney or whatever. And one of them actually talked about the process of animation. And like for other kids that age, like that completely, like I was so young that, at that point I had thought that, Disney characters were just sort of like, Roger Rabbit, everybody had, they lived in a different part of Hollywood. That was not the case. And I learned that. And then instead of being like scarred by it, I was like, oh my God, I could do that. I could be a god. And it was something I always, from that point on, really wanted to do. Though as we went into comics, it I don't know. As I got older, I started reading a lot more comics. Mostly it started with manga because that's what was available to me. There was a lot of gatekeeping before that. So getting into comics of any kind was really hard. And then I just started, like, as I grew up, like, looking back, I actually started just drawing my own comics in general, like, from a really early age. I never actually animated. So once I met Alan and he had this, idea, that came out of his head, I was just like, we should do something with this. So we started working on it, and we decided after taking it to talk to different producers and executives that, they were sort of like, you're not Adventure Time, you're not Batman, you're not Family Guy. Where do we put you? Can you prove that anime is a thing that gets money? So we decided just take it to a comic because we really didn't want to have to ask permission to tell our own story, and that's kind of where we are.
I think that's really cool. That idea that you guys wanted it to be an animated series, and looking at it, it definitely has that look and feel. Like you guys compared to Batman the animated series and stuff like that, which I mean I'm a huge fan of. You see, got it right there on the shelf, full display. So I'm a major fan of that. That's one of the reasons I think I responded to you to Kamikaze so much. But I think that's really cool. The idea of it's kind of tough. It's not feasible for everybody to make an animation on their own, to make an animated series or even a pilot or anything like that. But if you're as talented as you guys are, you can pull off like the webcomic sort of thing and get that audience and start building that because that's super important. So was this your first webcomic you guys did? Have you guys done anything like that before this?
I think so. I think I made a couple attempts earlier, like in college. I posted like a page or two of something, but it really wasn't thought out at all.
Mm-hmm.
And after that page or two, I was like, no, the production on this is like way too intensive. There's no way I can keep doing this, and I don't even have a story to keep going on. So I ran out of bridge really fast.
Mm-hmm.
They were
So
gorgeous pages, though. He did them all in like watercolor and ink. They were just
it,
beautiful.
they were horrendously ambitious, and
Yeah.
maybe it's like on my to-do list of things to go back and play around with it again in the future. But like Kamikaze was like really our first, at least my first real attempt to do this as something that's not just I'm making it up as I go along.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah.
I've done comics like as part of like fandoms in the past when I was in high school, and a couple of them got kind of popular. But I think in high school I did like a 30-page comic in a week.
Wow.
Whoa.
Fully ink and everything, and like a lot of people in high school were actually really into it, which is really cool. And the reason why I finished it in a week was because I knew my attention span is so short. Like I never finished anything, so I'm like, okay, I got a week. I can't leave this unfinished, so I completed it. So that's I think that was the last time I really finished anything. I've started webcomics before. I've tried to, kickstart, or not using Kickstarter, but start certain projects. But my attention eventually either fizzled out or I just lost interest in it. I've never been on board with a creative project like Kamikaze for this long before.
Well, that's great. That's cool. So I was talking about the artwork, and I mean, I'm a story guy. I'm a writer myself, so I love the story, and I love the story you guys have laid out and everything. But the artwork really captured my imagination. I really enjoyed it. Like, it's just the colors are gorgeous. It's incredible, it's stunning. The characters are like so full of so full of life and everything. One of the things I was curious about is how this visual style came about. How do you go of designing this world and the characters?
Oh boy.
Okay, so
There's a story behind that.
yeah, there is definitely a story behind that. So we always knew we wanted to follow really in the footsteps of things like Gargoyles and Batman the Animated Series when we were going for like the animated aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the work I was doing at the time was I was working for various animation studios doing background illustration for animated productions. Uh, there was a certain style that I was using in those, and because this was sort of something that we were starting off while we all had day jobs, I wanted to make that transition as seamless as possible. So I more or less shamelessly stole the production style for the backgrounds from that production and just added on a couple extra steps that I always kind of wished I could do at work, but which are more like the texture and shading approaches to the backgrounds. So there was that, but the character design went through a very interesting evolution. I don't know if either the ladies want to take a stab at describing this journey we went on.
I guess I can.
Yeah, so like
Yeah,
at one point we showed the script and the initial artwork, which we spent maybe 7 or 8 months on, by the way. So we had spent a ton of time producing the pitch document art, and we were super confident about the art. But when we showed the story and the art to a bunch of people, unanimously, like 100% of them told us that they liked the story, they liked the art, but there was kind of a disconnect between the two of them. Because at the time, the style was very much Disney inspired, and the style kind of looked like it was geared towards a younger crowd, which we had no idea that that's how it came off until we asked for feedback. So we had a conundrum. We could either tweak the story for it so that it can appeal to a younger audience, or we tweak the art style. And we decided to tweak the art style, and just finding the style in itself took almost 12 months.
Wow.
It was really frustrating. We had to really go back to the drawing board and figure out, okay, we had to sit down and actually write out what shows or looks that we were going for and what we liked about them and why. And then we had to go through and basically parse out how we can rework a lot of those styles. So things that we were pulling from was like Aeon Flux, Batman Beyond, Gargoyles in some cases. We were also looking a lot at
Young Justice.
Huh?
Young Justice.
Yeah, Young Justice, and G.I. Joe Renegades was actually the one that actually pushed us past that point. That we're like, oh, here we go. This is where we're getting in the area.
Yeah. Clement Sauvet's work. Yeah.
Yeah, Clement Sauvet, we love you. Rest in peace. But he did just such a great. His work was just so amazing, and it really inspired us to find a way to make things look, not exactly hard edged, but chunky and have this sort of more adult look to it and less childish in a way. So the edges are harder. There's more points and sharp.
The eyes are smaller.
Yeah, the eyes are smaller.
A little bit more realistic proportions.
Yeah. And the line art is a lot thinner too.
And like a lot of people ask us, like, oh, well, why did it take so long? I mean, if you think about it, Kamikaze is completely new. No one knew who we were. The art style is so important because it's going to convey or communicate to new readers what the tone is, what we're going for. So I think it's something artists should pay attention to.
Yeah. It also helps us like stand out from the crowd, like when we go to conventions and things like that.
Yeah.
Like everybody's got that, Jack Kirby or, Marvel DC look to their comics. And, when we come onto the scene, it's sort of like people like sort of shake their heads and look at it. And it's like, wait, this looks so different. And I think that's a good thing. But at the same time, we've told people like how long our process takes and what that process is. And we've had, professionals in the industry say, okay, well, you're insane, but this is really pretty.
Yeah, speaking of that process, like you guys each have your own roles to play and everything in the overall creation of it. You do, is it a page a week?
Yes.
So can you talk about that weekly process of just putting out one page? Where does it start? Where does it go next, and all that?
Well,
yeah. Go ahead.
I can just starting from the very beginning, and in the way that we work is that when we're actually sitting down to write the episodes out, what a lot of people do is that they'll just write out everything in comic format from an outline. When I'm writing out everything, I actually do it in screenplay format. So when an episode is written, it's written in its entirety. So everything is ready to go on that front. We know where we're going. We know how it's going to work. Then all that script is broken down into pieces, and then we do it page by page. When you're running a webcomic and you have such an involved story, you have to kind of find a way to make each page really engaging for the reader. So the way that I try to funnel it is that, every page has to have like a beginning, a middle, and an end. If there's not a good end point that has some kind of not necessarily cliffhanger, but, makes you want to read the next page, then I'm not doing my job right.
I know that like they say when you're writing comics and stuff like that, you gotta, each page has to have that, like you said, that story, and you gotta get them to turn the page. What happens next, that kind of thing. You guys do that, but on a week-to-week basis. Like you gotta leave it off in a way that they want to come back next week and pick that story right back up.
And that's one of the reasons why we also have to work so hard to jam as much into a page as we can. Like, I think our average page has about 9 panels. I think the most panels we've had in one page has been like 14 or 15. And a lot of people like look at this and go, holy crap, this is like jam packed. But, in order to get the story across and as quickly as we can with webcomics, if you have to keep them engaged. And if you can't get as much story across as possible in a small amount of time, you're actually kind of shooting yourself in the foot. But from that point, so we take the scripts, and then I hand them off to Alan, who then goes into thumbnails. So you want to tell us about that, Dave?
Yeah. So because a lot of our process still follows the animation pipeline, a lot of what happens next follows a lot of what that process would be. So I do thumbnails, which are almost the equivalent of what a storyboard would be in the animation process. Carrie and I hash out whether it's effectively communicating that the script page, and then it moves from there into an enlarged rough, which then has more or less the rough character action and acting. I draw quite sketchily, so I'm not. The drawings don't end there. It actually goes to Havana, who then gets the characters on model, refines the expressions. That gets scanned in to our computer, and then from there on, it's a digital process where Carrie is doing ink and paint in Photoshop, just like you'd be doing ink and paint on animation cells if it was an animation production. And I'm working on sort of a separate track, building out the backgrounds using a combination of Illustrator, SketchUp, which is a 3D modeling program, and Photoshop. Those backgrounds are basically designed to support the sort of the consensus we reached with that rough page or that clean page. And then at the end, it all kind of merges back in together, and Havana adds in the lettering, which is a little bit different from how a lot of normal comic page production goes, where there's a lot more intention given to where the word bubbles are going to be ahead of time. We kind of try to budget for some free space for Havana to work with, and she manages to pull it off at the end. But yeah, it kind of all merges in at the end, and I'd say 19 times out of 20, it's before the pages due to be posted. We're always working on trying to get a buffer, so we're not having 5 a.m. scrambles to get everything done. So yeah, it's a little bit of a process which is a little bit unique from a comic production standpoint, because it is mimicking the animation style so much. And sometimes it's a bit of a liability, but other times it's really an asset, because it does allow for some last minute creativity. If like the composition of something isn't quite working out, if once the background is there and the characters are there, we're not like locked in, like the inks aren't immutable and inflexible. We can actually scoot the characters around and sweeten the composition a bit. We recently, for the second Kickstarter video, we had the ability to do some like multi-plane camera shots using some of our backgrounds, and that was actually surprisingly easy for us to do, because we had these separate components, because we've been treating it like animation components up to that point. So it made it very easy for us to add in that motion, which was actually really exciting, because it wasn't a lot of effort for us to get it to the point where it's moving. I mean, there was a whole bunch of actual character motion which wasn't happening, but that's another step.
And yeah. Havana, you come in at what point he was talking about what point do you come into the process?
So when Alan gets the rough layouts drawn out, I then go in and take the animation light box, and I'll actually clean up the lines. And in that process, he's already got the body language down and the basic figures down and the proportions and everything. That helps me focus on like the facial expressions, just fine tuning some of the details, and just making sure that the characters look like the characters. And then at the end, when I do the lettering, I actually take that into Photoshop or Illustrator. And I actually had, when we did our first Kamikaze Wall Tales, we got to work with Dan Jolly a little bit. He's an Eisner-nominated comic writer, and he actually gave me a lot of tips and tricks on lettering and how the bubbles are supposed to look like and everything. Because I've never, I don't think any of us ever done comics professionally. Yeah. So yeah, I do the lettering, and then after that, Alan applies like some of the final tweaks on it, and then the page is ready to go.
That's awesome. Havana, I hear that are you a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
I am.
I heard that. I thought that was fascinating. How does that translate into your work on a project like this with the movement and the fight scenes and stuff like that?
I think like Carrie's always picking my brain on how to make a fight scene seem a little more realistic. I've been training for about a little over 2 years, and then maybe more than that. I'm not sure. I've lost count. Also, like one of the things that we had, which was an interesting discussion, is for each character, what sort of martial art would they actually utilize? What makes sense for their character? So like we see Flair in the first Kamikaze Wall Tales. For her, I've always thought of like something graceful like Wing Chun or Judo, something like very surgical and very precise, right? Kamikaze or Markeisha herself is not so graceful, so she might be a little more scrappy, maybe some boxing, maybe a little bit of jiu-jitsu, maybe kickboxing, but she's definitely not like that's just one example of how we kind of like figure out, okay, what type, how would the characters fight, and how does it tie back into their personality and story.
I think that's really cool. So talking about the characters, and you're talking about they all have their different styles and stuff like that. I just want to say I think it's really nice to see such a diverse cast of characters in a comic like this and everything. Can you talk a little bit about how and why that was so important for you guys coming into this?
Sure. So Markeisha, like a lot of people kind of give us a little bit of a hairy eyeball, but when Markeisha first came onto the page, she came in the door that way. Like she just came in the door as a woman of color when Alan first drew her. And from there we were just like, wow, she's such an interesting character. We want to tell her story. What is her story? And as we went on, I'm trying to think. I think only one character really we ended up doing some serious rework on as far as like their diversity. So most of the characters that we have just always been that way. And maybe that's like a reflection of where Alan and I grew up. Alan and I both grew up uh, on around a military base in separate states. So I was in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He was in what's the base up that way?
Brunswick, Maine. So
Brunswick, Maine.
Yeah.
Brunswick, Maine. So it was sort of like we were sort of surrounded by this kind of different diversity. And for me, when we started working on the other characters, it was sort of like I thought of my friends and the fact that there weren't that many people who they found representation with when I was a kid. And
Right.
While you see a lot of representation getting much better for kids storytelling now, it's not much better for adult storytelling. And I feel like I wanted to try to change that and reflect not only the people that I knew and loved, but also the people from the past that I feel like needed more representation.
Yeah, I think as a team, diversity and representation, especially in sci-fi and fantasy, is a huge rallying cause for us. We really believe very strongly that it's something that if we have an opportunity to do it, then we should absolutely do everything we can to, from a place of respect, from a place of humility, do what we can to portray, as diverse a world as makes sense for a story world. Not doing it if we had the opportunity would be shortchanging ourselves as creators and shortchanging our audience. And because it's storytelling, it's something where we have an opportunity to contribute something. And the last thing we want to be doing is making a poorer product just because we felt like being lazy. So to me, it's it's the least we can do.
Yeah, like you said, it's super important, and I love that you guys are doing that. It's awesome. It's one of the things that just makes this comic more unique and stand out more.
Thank you.
Another you guys mentioned it a couple times. Another cool thing you guys are doing are these wall tales, anthology stories, these little one-off stories. Can you talk a little bit about you know the process on those and incorporating that, and exactly maybe just explain what they are for someone who doesn't know?
Sure. So the wall tales were sort of our solution to a problem we kind of created for ourselves, because we wanted the main storyline to be sort of a slow burn on the origin story, and we had sort of a bit of a complex world and complex characters we wanted to introduce. By necessity, that meant that it was going to be quite a while before Marcatia became Kamikaze, so before we actually got to the superheroic bits. And we realized relatively early on, once we were starting to publish the comic, this was going to be a problem because there were people who were going to be willing to go along with us on this very slow ride to get to the actual superhero bits. There were a whole bunch of other people who were much more accustomed and ready to experience it on sort of the standard superhero, one-off adventure side of things. So we wanted to create something that was compatible with our story world that allowed us to serve that audience, to get right to the quote unquote meat of things. So what we decided to do was, because Marcatia is in some ways a folk hero for this dystopian city, we thought, well, why don't we do these one-off, short, 18 to 20, page long stories. And the first one was actually, I think, 8 pages long, where we kind of tell the story of Kamikaze through the lens of other people's interactions with Kamikaze as she's being sort of this covert operative, and sort of seeing how this kind of gets distorted into sort of this folk hero superhero mythos for this population. So it was a really great opportunity for us to be able to zip ahead to that and tell stories which we wouldn't be able to tell in the main storyline because they had to be a little bit more episodic. But it also allowed us to explore other parts of the world, allowed us to do little bits of cool character building that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And it also allowed us to bring in other creators, because the main webcomic consumes a lot of our time as a core, and we thought this is a great opportunity for us to bring in either young artists or other artists whose voices we feel might be lacking in the comics community, and give them a chance to kind of hold the kid for a while and play around with this concept of this superheroine and this world, and see what they can do with it. And we provide a lot of script support in the beginning. Carrie does a lot of work with our writers. The first one was Dan Jolly. The second one was Melissa White, to really kind of hash out what the story would be, and not so much in dictating what the story should be, but just providing sort of a, yes, that works with our world. No, that maybe this should change a little bit. But aside from that, we give them a lot of latitude to be able to explore the world and get a chance to tell these like short, exciting adventures.
Mm-hmm. And really, when it comes down to the actual writing of the wall tales, it's sort of like it's more like when they're coming to me with the stories, it's sort of like, okay, you're going into spoiler territory that we can't get into yet, so no, you can't talk about this subject, or this character we haven't really seen yet, so this is their personality. Like for the first wall tale, Midnight Run, featured Flair, who is this character that we have in a lot of our display art, and everybody, like so many people, kept asking about her and saying like, who is this character? And one of the problems is that she doesn't show up for another like couple episodes. So we were like, well, I guess we should go ahead and kind of scratch that itch for our audience. But having to work with Dan Jolly to make sure that okay, he got the um, character's personality right, and he got certain things that she would do or wouldn't do pulled together. And also with Melissa, it was like, okay, she had all of these questions about about Outer Trinity for Soundbox, which is currently going on right now, and one of the Wall Tales that we're actually trying to produce with our Kickstarter. Um, but she had all these different questions about the world, and okay, could this work? How does this work? And it was just fun, not only exploring the world through their eyes, but also seeing how their influences also influence our work as well. And I think it's one of the coolest things about it is there's this like trade of ideas that makes the world and the stories not only more unique but also more true to life in a way.
Okay, so Soundbox is part of the second Kickstarter.
Right.
So you're doing to raise this for the second volume and Soundbox. Kickstarters can be really tough. I was involved with one for a film that I was a part of a while back, and they could just be super tricky and tough to do. You guys have already done one successful Kickstarter, and you're on your way to a second. What are some of the things you learned from the first Kickstarter, the first time around, that you've applied to the way you're doing things this time?
Havana, you were talking about this the other day, and I think you had something interesting to say. You were talking about how like it was interesting, like basically how we were talking about the goals and how they changed over time. And do you remember this conversation? I know we had it.
Well, I do know a couple things that we've learned. One, we learned to be a lot more deliberate about figuring out how our fulfillment was going to work out. We kind of went into it a little bit half-cocked last time. We were lucky enough that we had a situation where the Kickstarter for the last one got funded about halfway through, and we were able to get our book order in for the volume one, quite early. But we didn't know quite exactly where our stretch goals were going to be, so we didn't want to get started on any of the stretch goal production until a little bit later on. Because we had the book order in early, we pretty much ended the Kickstarter with books in hand, which was a pretty bizarre position for us to be in. Because we had that, we felt kind of cruddy, just kind of leaving, holding on to all these books until we had everything else ready. And we wanted to be transparent with our audience. So we decided that we were going to send out the books first. This wasn't necessarily a bad thing because it did get books out to people early, and it helped us learn a lot of things about how much abuse certain things can take in transit. But what it did do is it meant that we ended up spending about twice as much as we normally would have on shipping because we had basically 2 shipping flights, and we hadn't really budgeted for that, but we were able to to deal with that. We also learned how to be we really paid a lot more attention to what people wanted second time around, as far as what rewards they were actually going to resonate with. So this time we're not going to be doing giant 11 by 17 posters. We're going to be doing things like enamel pins and stickers and things like that. We've learned quite a bit, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how many dividends that pays for us as we we get here towards the middle of the Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So talk a little bit about the goal and where you are at the moment in reaching that goal and everything, and
Sure.
some of the other rewards that people can get for donating.
Sure thing. So right now we are just shy of the halfway mark on the Kickstarter campaign as far as funds raised. We're going towards 12,400. That's our fundraising goal. Right now we're just south of $6,000, and we've got 19 days to go. So we're in a pretty good position. I'm feeling pretty good about that.
And we have Heroes Con coming up, which will help as well.
Nice.
Right.
But one of the things we're really excited about during this Kickstarter is I'm excited about the rewards. As Alan said, we have stickers, we have pins, but we also have a brand new commission tier, and it's just you can commission some art from us. I know a lot of people have actually asked us for commissions in the past, especially fellow writers who need a character designed or something. So I'm excited that we'll be providing that. And then we also have additional cameo rewards as well. So last time we only had 3 speaking cameo rewards, and now we have speaking cameos and just stand-in cameos. I'm really excited about that one as well.
Right. And also, a bunch of our reward tiers are really aimed at new readers. So if because this is the second volume, and we realize that not everyone coming to the campaign, we hope actually the majority of people coming to our campaign are new readers. There's lots of tiers that allow you to get volume 1 and volume 2 plus the other stuff as sort of a bundle, because we realize that some people just need to get the ability to get both in hand. And we also realized from the first Kickstarter that there were a lot of people who wanted 2 copies of the books or 3 copies of the books because they wanted a copy to hang on to plus a copy to read, or they had a friend in mind that they wanted to give a copy to. So we wanted to really make sure that we were facilitating that. Also, we have like a donation tier where if you have a nonprofit in mind, we really want to make sure that you have the ability to have a copy for yourself, but also donate a copy to a kids hospital or a library, and make sure that we get the spread the love around. We also have a pack for comic shops. We have had a chance to get into a bunch of comic shops with Volume 1 since launch, and that's been really exciting. And we really want to make sure that we're providing that as an option in the Kickstarter, so that comic shops, if they want to get stocked up on us early, have that ability. And that's been a really educational experience along the way too.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was going to bring up that donor tier thing. I thought that was really cool. So you've got a couple stretch goals. You want to talk about what you get to do if you reach some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So go ahead, Carrie.
So the first one that we have is the next wall tail tier, which are Kickstarter stretch goal, which basically just means that we can have the funds to pay new writers or new artists a better wage for the work that they're doing. A lot of the folks that are working on our wall tails right now are actually doing it for volunteer, like for free, which is something that when we first started, we were like, well, how much do we want to get paid? And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. And I'm just like, this is a lot of work. Are you crazy? But they've just sort of done this out of the kindness of their hearts, and I think having the ability to actually have their work in print, and we want to push that out as much as possible so that they can have get that exposure and that experience and have that recognition for what they're doing. But we really want to be able to pay the next people that are working on the wall tail, so that's what the next stretch goal is about. We've already got a couple people who are really interested in working with us, and I feel like it would just make me feel a lot better if we could actually pay the people who are giving their time and effort, and especially as much time and effort as they are.
Right. Yeah. And another stretch goal we have is we want to add in some bonus content to the book, because we're a little bit earlier on in the layout process of Volume 2 than we were with Volume 1. We have a little bit more flexibility to dictate what goes into the book. So we have about 10 extra pages worth of bonus content that we want to put into the book. Volume 2 is slightly shorter than Volume 1 was by about 10-ish pages, just because it was a shorter episode. And we want to give the opportunity to fill up that extra content, because we felt that the 120 pages for the first one was a really solid size, and if we can get back up to that, we absolutely want to. And that's going to be about $14,000 if we can get to it. Our like absolute top tier, pie in the sky stretch goal is an animated short. We really do want to get back to the animation, but we also are trying to be very realistic about the amount of money it would take to hire the right people and make sure that we're doing it right. Because the last thing we want to do is go into it, half-cocked and produce something which is subpar, because we don't feel that would be fair to our fans. We don't feel like that would be fair to all the people who have gotten really excited about what this could be, to produce something subpar. That's not what we're interested in doing.
Yeah. And I mean, we are animators ourselves. Me and Alan are, but the way that we basically put it is, we can either create the comic or we can create an animation at a slower pace. And as far as like being able to animate it ourselves, we could do that. But again, we wouldn't be able to get the story out anywhere near as well. And it would just
right. And
yeah,
like, people are already getting on their asses about posting only one page.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you think that's slow?
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. So I got one last question. You guys are doing all this yourself, and it's really impressive, like the stuff you guys are putting out there, because it's fantastic. What advice do you have for other writers and artists out there who kind of want to do what you guys are doing?
I think part of it is, just realizing that this is a war of inches. That it really requires patience in yourself. It requires perseverance, and it requires giving yourself a proper balance between the amount of work you're going to be investing in this, but also investing in time for yourself, because it is something where ultimately it's about having a sustainable process. We're lucky because we're a team of 3. We can kind of split up the workload, and we have the ability to kind of sense when one person is getting overloaded and figure out how to sort of rebalance the structure so that we're not overwhelming any one person in the pipeline. Not everyone's going to be that lucky. Not everyone's going to have a team to work with. So being able to be very alert about when you're starting to feel overloaded and figuring out how you're going to compensate for that and make it work for you, that's incredibly important, because if there's no point in burning yourself out super early in the process, or even 20 pages in. Most comics don't make it past, like web comics don't make it past like update 20. So realizing it's something you're going to be doing for the long haul, almost approaching it sort of like a relationship, that's incredibly important. If you do have the opportunity to work with a team, communication is horrendously important. I'm very lucky because I've got 2 people who are fantastically good at communicating, and I don't think this would be working quite as well as it does if I didn't have that.
I believe in over communication, actually. For me, I think as Ellen said, the perseverance and dedication is a big thing. If you get past like 20 pages, I mean, that's an accomplishment. I think also like having a clear understanding of why you're doing it is crucial, because it's not always going to be fun. But if you can remember like why you did this in the first place, something that helps me keep things back on track. Like, there have been so many times where Alan and Carrie are asking for something like, ugh, damn again. But to me, it's like, hey, Havana, this is your chance to be part of something really cool. Like, you actually have people who like really take the story and comic seriously. And this is your chance to get to work on a comic or an animated concept. And you didn't even have to go to school or do anything for it. So, I mean, that's what keeps me going on the project.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, one of the biggest things that I would suggest for new people who want to do webcomics or want to do anything of create your own indie comic, I really just suggest getting a team, because having a team means that you're not wearing every single hat all the time.
Yeah, but finding a team is hard.
Yeah, it is hard. It
sure,
is
yeah.
absolutely hard. I will absolutely give that. But it's sort of like, I I mean, we lucked out with Havana for sure, because we have such a great creative chemistry, and it's sort of like if you find somebody that you have a creative chemistry with, that when you start talking about an idea, they start talking about questions, and then you start feeding off of each other's energies. Get their number, like get their number, start working with them.
Get them digits.
Yeah, seriously, get those digits, because these are people that you want to be working with. And having people who are there to tell you, no, that's a really dumb idea, Carrie, is great, because then you don't have that super dumb idea in your comic. And then you also have people that are there to check you when something's wrong. So if you're freaking out, like there have been so many points over this, even just this Kickstarter, that I have just been simultaneously going from a vibrating anxiety, ridden person to an absolute puddle, and just having Alan and Havana there to make
It's really bright over here.
to make just to remind me that okay, everything's gonna be all right, is great. And I cannot imagine doing a Kickstarter on my own, because all of that is suddenly right on you, and that would be terrifying to me. So having my teammates is something that I just find not only invaluable, but absolutely necessary. But that's just me.
Awesome.
Can I share something really dumb?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I just came back from a birthday party for a 1-year-old, and I was the only one without a kid. And everyone, I'm like, oh, cute. And I had my book, and like, oh, this is what I work on. This is my baby. It was really dumb, but people were interested.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Oh, by the way, that's another thing for indie creators. Carry your stuff with you, because you never know who is going to be interested. Like, I get the biggest reactions not from fellow geeks, but actually from just regular everyday people who don't, they don't even have, they probably don't even read comics, but all of a sudden they're looking through them. You never know who you run into. So carry your work with you, either on your phone or physically, because no one's going to know what you're all about until you show or tell them.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, that's a really good point, Havana, because yesterday, Alan and I went to go get lunch at this taco stand we go to a lot, and we were there, and one of the ladies who knows us as regulars was like, oh, hey, how's it going? And we started talking, and we told her about the Kickstarter, and she's like, oh, I had no idea. What kind of comic do you have? So I just took out the comic and showed it to her, and she was like, she ended up putting us in contact with another friend of hers who does comic, who's been like putting outreach for our Kickstarter. So like, just being able to sit down and talk to people about the work that you do, if they're interested, is just like amazing. And the amount, like when they find out that you make this thing, they get so excited. There was actually one person that Havana's old job had, where when we did our first Kickstarter, like they had read comics. They were huge comic fans, like when they were kids. And our comic, when we put it out on the Kickstarter, was the first one that they'd had in several years, like almost a decade. And they were like, you guys reawoke my love for comics, and to be able to have that's amazing. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, the Kickstarter ends on June 24th, is that correct?
At midnight.
At midnight. Tell people one more time where they can find it. I guess you would search for it on Kickstarter.
Yeah, you can either search for it on Kickstarter at for Kamikaze Volume 2 and Soundbox, or you can go to book2.kmkz.tv. That'll take you directly to it.
Okay.
And if you want to read the actual comic before you actually get the physical copy, you can check everything out at kamikazecomic.com.
Awesome. And where can everyone find you online, each of you, on like Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff?
Sure thing. So I'm that Tupper Kid on Twitter, and I'm just Alan Tupper on Facebook. I tend to do most of my like socialization on Twitter, to be completely honest. I lurk on Facebook. Go ahead.
I am Mermaid Shells on Twitter and on Instagram. So if you guys, sometimes I post up stuff that I'm doing on Instagram. We also have a Kamikaze Instagram, which is Kamikaze Animated. And you can find me mostly on Twitter.
Sure. But you guys do have a Facebook. Sorry to interrupt. You guys do have a Facebook page for Kamikaze. Right. That's what I was.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And that's Kamikaze Animated.
Okay, sure. And Havana, where can they find you?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at havanatweets.com. No, scratch the .com. Just at Havana Tweets.
You're not that big yet.
Awesome.
Verified though.
and you can find Kamikaze on Twitter at Kamikaze Comic.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show, talk about Kamikaze. You guys definitely made a new fan right here because I just love this comic and I can't wait to keep going and see what's next. I caught up with everything over the past couple of days, read everything that you guys got up, so I just absolutely love it.
Well, I'm actually curious. Who's your favorite character?
I mean, Markeisha, I really like her. She's an awesome character, and I love her father as well. Is it Toshi?
Toshi.
Yeah. He's just. I love that idea, the blind writer, and like that really cool thing that the things that he like the way he writes the computer system. That I love sci-fi, like futuristic sci-fi ideas like that, and that just I really responded to that stuff. I thought
fantastic.
That was really awesome.
That's awesome.
And the father-daughter dynamic is great as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like a lot of the father-daughter dynamic comes from like when you're raised by a single parent, like you kind of have that constant, we have to take care of each other sort of thing. So you're not only parent-child relationship, you're also kind of friends and caretakers too. And I think a lot of people really love Toshi and Markeisha. We've actually had people like low-key tell us if you do anything to Toshi, there will be pitchforks and torches at your front door.
Please don't. Please don't.
I don't want to die. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks guys for being on the show, and definitely if you're watching this, please go and support this Kickstarter because it's for an awesome comic book. Check it out. You're gonna love it.
Thank you so much for having us.
So much for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so that's my interview with the insanely talented folks behind Kamikaze. I want to give a special thanks to Stephanie Lucas for setting us up with Carrie, Alan, and Havana. They were great guests, and we were delighted to have them. And one last time, please check out their Kickstarter. Go to Kickstarter.com and look for Kamikaze Volume 2 and Soundbox. Donate and get your hands on one of these kick-ass books. Alright, before I get to my usual wrap-up, I wanted to point out that we have a bunch of new movie reviews that have gone up over the last couple weeks. 2 weeks ago, episode 33 was our Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 spoiler review. If you haven't seen the film yet, somehow you still haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, you can still check out our non-spoiler video review. Last week's episode, we reviewed King Arthur and Batman and Bill on Hulu, and that episode also featured our Alien Covenant spoiler review. Same thing, if you haven't seen Alien Covenant, you can still check out our non-spoiler review on the Amazing Nerdiverse channel. You can watch Steven channel his inner pirate on our Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Tales review. That's up there. We got a couple written reviews. I did one for Baywatch, which you can find on heroichollywood.com. I gave that film a B-. Is that too high of a score? Probably. Maybe I was still buzzing over the fact that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson showed up at my screening, which, by the way, you can check out the video of that on our channel. One of the coolest things that ever happened in my life. That was awesome. I got it on tape, so you can check it out. I did a Captain Underpants review that can only be found on theamazingnerdiverse.com. Please check that out. We're going to be doing a lot more exclusive stuff like that on the site. I just saw It Comes at Night, and I'm seeing The Beguiled this week, and so I'm going to be doing reviews for both of those very soon, and those will only be on theamazingnerdiverse.com. So check that out, support those. We're going to try to do more stuff like that. And of course, Wonder Woman. We got our video review up on the channel, and I also did a review for Heroic Hollywood. Please check both of those out. watch our Wonder Woman review and then go see Wonder Woman. Support the hell out of that movie. Not only that, so we can get more awesome female-led superhero movies made by insanely talented female directors like Patty Jenkins, but also because it's fucking great. I feel like I need to say that because, like, full disclosure, I'll pull back the curtain a little bit. When we were shooting our review, we had a little bit of a malfunction, and we were going on for about a good 10 minutes and then realized that it stopped recording. We didn't know what we had lost in there, so we tried to go back and remember everything we said and cover our tracks and everything, but, I think a little bit of our enthusiasm was lost, and I think we might have missed out on some of the praise that we had for the film. So our review itself might not seem like we liked the movie as much as at least I did. I can only speak for myself, but I loved it. But I feel like our overall opinions on the film are summed up by our scores of the film. So still, please check out our video review. So I think that's all the movie reviews that we've done, unless there's any more that are escaping me. One more time, big thanks to our lovely guests. Please let them know how much you liked hearing from them on the episode. Next week, Steven will be back, and we'll be back to business as usual. Okay, with all that being said, if you liked this episode, please subscribe to The Amazing Nerdiverse on iTunes. And most importantly, leave a review on iTunes. It's the most important thing you can do to help us out and help people find this show. If you're watching on YouTube, like this video and subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below. Let us know what you like. Share the show with your friends online on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/TheAmazingNerdiverse. On Instagram, @AmazingNerdiverse. And on Twitter, I'm @Jeff_Grants. Steven is @Steven Tukert. And we are @NerdiversePod. And finally, go to theamazingnerdiverse.com for all that and very little more. And until next time, I'm Jeff Grants. Steven, take us on out of here.
Hit him.